All right, let's take a march out to the very edge of civilization. I'm talking about the desolate, windswept borders of the Roman Empire. In this explainer, we're going to look past the whole gladiator myth and dig into the real life of a soldier on the wall. You know, the guy whose grueling day-to-day routine was basically the glue holding the entire empire together.
So yeah, let's just dive right in. When you picture a Roman soldier, what's the first thing that pops in your head? Epic battles, right? Triumphal parades through Rome? Well, the reality? It was something else entirely. And honestly, way more impressive.
Okay, so here's the difference in a nutshell. You got the Hollywood version over here, just nonstop, glorious action. But the real deal? That's what we see on the other side. For most of these soldiers, especially out on the frontier, life wasn't really about fighting. It was this meticulous, grinding routine, a lot of labor, a lot of discipline, and usually it was all happening in the middle of nowhere.
This quote right here from our source material, it just perfectly sets the stage. This idea of mastery of the mundane, that was the secret sauce. That's what let Rome hold its massive borders for centuries. So what did that meticulous, grinding routine actually look like day to day? Well, a soldier's day started under what you could call the tyranny of the trumpet. I mean, there was no hitting the snooze button, no gentle wake-up call. Just the cold, hard blast of a trumpet slicing through that pre-dawn darkness, telling you it's time to go.
Just look at this timeline. It shows you exactly how structured and frankly unforgiving the morning was. It all kicks off at 5 a.m. with the classicum. That's the trumpet call. And get this, the very first thing they do? Gear maintenance. Before anything else, they're polishing armor, checking weapons. And why? Well, pretty simple. A soldier's life literally depended on his equipment. Being lazy about it could get you killed, not just in battle, but by your own commanders. Then a quick, functional breakfast, and bam, by 6 a.m., just an hour after waking up, they're already lined up for inspection.
And that breakfast drink I mentioned? Yeah, forget your morning coffee. The Roman soldiers' go-to pick-me-up was something called pasca. We're talking a cheap, sour mix of vinegar, water, and some herbs. It definitely wasn't about taste, let me tell you. It was all about getting a jolt of energy, and, maybe more importantly, purifying whatever questionable water they could find out on the frontier. It's just one of those perfect little details that really grounds you in the gritty reality of their lives, you know? So, you gotta understand, when the centurion is inspecting his men at that 6 a.m. parade, he's not just looking for a little rust on their armor. No. What he's really doing is reinforcing the sacramentum. That's the sacred oath of allegiance every single soldier swore to Rome. So every polished helmet, every sharpened sword, it was like a physical symbol of this totally unbreakable vow. Okay, so once those morning rituals were done, the real work began. And for most soldiers, this meant putting down the sword and picking up a shovel. They weren't just warriors, they were basically the engineers of the empire. And this, right here, is one of the big secrets to Roman dominance. It wasn't just about being good at fighting, it was about incredible engineering skill. And the soldiers? They were the main workforce. I mean, they were the ones building those famous roads, repairing stone walls, quarrying stone, felling timber, digging massive ditches, you name it. The empire was literally, and I mean literally, built on their backs. And you can just imagine the physical toll was immense. On top of all that hard labor, you had the training. Take the sarcisia, that's the soldier's full pack. We're talking over 60 pounds. And that wasn't just weapons and armor, no. It also had entrenching tools, rations, personal stuff, the whole shebang.
And they would march up to 20 Roman miles a day while carrying that thing. And if that wasn't tough enough, they would often drill with wooden practice weapons that were deliberately made heavier than their real gear. This relentless grinding training made sure that on the off chance battle actually came,
they were more than ready.
But, life wasn't all work and marching. The fort itself, the castra, it was like its own little self-sufficient island of Roman civilization plopped down in the middle of nowhere. You can really think of it as a city in miniature, with its own social rules and daily rhythms.
And maybe the most important building for a soldier's sanity was the thermae, the bathhouse. It was so much more than just a place to get clean. This was the social hub of the entire fort. It was the spot where ranks didn't matter as much, where you could catch up on news and really forge those bonds of brotherhood. And this was absolutely crucial for surviving the psychological pressure of being so isolated.
But if the fort was all about discipline, right outside the walls was the escape hatch, the vicus. This was the civilian town that just kind of popped up around any long-term fort. It was a place with taverns, merchants, families, a bit of normal life. For a soldier, the vicus was a vital safety valve, really. A place to spend his pay and get a small taste of freedom from that super rigid military structure. And speaking of pay, the Roman system was actually pretty clever. So a soldier would get his gross salary, the stipendium, but, and this is key, a big chunk of that was immediately deducted for things like food, uniforms, and even a mandatory savings fund. The whole system was designed to keep the soldier both dependent on the army and at the same time financially invested in its success. Smart, right?
All right, let's move to the end of the day and to what was probably the most critical duty of all, the night watch. This is where discipline was just absolute, and the stakes could not have been higher.
The penalty for messing up on the night watch? Well, it could be summed up in one single terrifying word. Fusario.
So what was fustarium? It meant that if a soldier was caught sleeping on watch, he would be beaten to death by his own comrades. And look, this wasn't just about being cruel. It was a brutal, but in their eyes, pragmatic form of justice. Think about it. One guy's mistake could get the entire garrison slaughtered, so the discipline had to be, without question, absolute.
So you can just imagine the psychological weight of all this. These soldiers were stuck in this constant state of tension, right? They were supposed to be enforcing the cold, distant authority of Rome, but they were living right next to a potentially hostile world they probably didn't understand at all. They were isolated, they were under constant pressure, and all they really had to rely on was their discipline and each other. And so the cycle just repeated, day in, day out. It was cleaning, marching, building, and watching. Just this endless, demanding, and, let's be honest, totally unglamorous loop. That was the real experience of a Roman soldier on the frontier. And really, this is the ultimate takeaway here. The Pax Romana, that famous, long-lasting Roman peace, it wasn't just won in a few famous battles. No, it was maintained, day after day after day, by the mundane, totally unglamorous dedication of thousands of soldiers doing brutally hard work on the fringes of the known world. It's such a powerful reminder, isn't it? That while we love to celebrate the big, dramatic moments in history, stability, real, lasting stability, is so often built on routine. And it really makes you wonder, what are the essential, maybe even unglamorous routines that are quietly holding our own world together right now? Something to think about. Thanks for joining me for this one.